line. We hold. The thing about wildfires is that they don't follow predictions. You can model wind patterns and fuel loads and terrain all you want, but fire has its own logic, and when conditions align, it moves faster than anything human can outrun. I learned that at 24 when the Yarnell Hill fire killed 19 firefighters in a single afternoon. I wasn't there. I was on a different crew, different fire, different mountain, but I knew 3 of the Granite Mountain hotshots who died. Knew their families, went to their funerals, spent the next 6 years asking myself what I would have done differently if I'd been the one making those calls. Now I'm 30, Superintendent of Arizona Interagency Hotshot Crew, and I still think about those 19 every time I send my people into fire. My name is Carter Hayes. Grew up in Flagstaff, 4th generation Arizona. The kind of family that understands this state is equal parts beautiful and deadly. Joined wildfire service at 20, made hotshot crew at 22, superintendent at 28. I lead 20 elite firefighters into the worst fires in the West, the ones that threaten towns, the ones that jump containment lines, the ones where one wrong decision costs lives. Most days I make the right calls. Some days I remember Yarnell Hill and wonder if I'm good enough to keep my crew alive. This particular morning, June, 5:45 a.m., already 93 degrees and climbing toward a forecasted 115, was briefing my crew on the saguaro fire. Started 3 days ago from a lightning strike in the Tonto National Forest, now threatening residential areas on Phoenix's northeast edge. We'd been cutting fire breaks for 48 hours, trying to box it in before the predicted wind shift pushed it toward neighborhoods. My radio crackled. Arizona Hotshots, this is Phoenix Dispatch. We have updated wind forecast. Gusts increasing to 35 miles per hour by 1400 hours. Analyst predicts extreme fire behavior. Be advised. The voice was calm, professional. The kind of steady delivery that tells you the dispatcher knows exactly how bad this information is, but isn't going to panic anyone. Copy that, dispatch. We'll adjust operations accordingly. I turned to my crew. You heard it. Winds coming early and harder than predicted. We're pulling back to the secondary fire break, reinforcing defensible space around structures. No one crosses the primary line once wind picks up. Clear? Clear, sup. We moved into position. Standard hotshot work. Cutting line, clearing brush, creating the fuel-free zones that stop fire from spreading. Hard, hot, dangerous labor that requires absolute focus, because one mistake in extreme fire conditions means someone burns. At 1:37 p.m., the wind hit. 35 miles per hour became 45 in gusts. The fire, which we'd been successfully containing, suddenly jumped our primary fire break and started running toward a residential subdivision. Crown fire, moving through treetops, the kind of fire behavior that turns containment operations into evacuations. My radio, Arizona Hotshots, Phoenix Dispatch, fire has jumped your primary line. Evacuations are underway for affected neighborhoods. What's your crew status? That voice again, calm despite the crisis, focused. Dispatch, we're falling back to secondary line. Crew is intact, no injuries. We'll hold the secondary line while residents evacuate. Copy. Evacuation teams report they need 30 minutes for complete neighborhood clearance. Can you hold that line for 30 minutes? I looked at the fire, already crowning through ponderosas, throwing embers a quarter-mile ahead, moving with the wind like a living thing. Looked at my crew, 20 firefighters who trusted me to make the right call. Looked at the neighborhood, maybe 300 houses, families, people who needed those 30 minutes. Dispatch, we can hold 30 minutes. But if wind increases beyond 50, we're pulling back regardless of evac status. Understood. I'll keep you updated on wind and evacuation progress. Stay safe out there. We held the line. Cut additional fire break, deployed structure protection resources, kept the fire from jumping to residential. It was brutal work. Heat, smoke, embers raining down, fire pushing hard against our containment. My crew performed flawlessly, every person doing exactly what needed to be done exactly when it needed doing. At minute 28, dispatch, Arizona Hotshots, evacuation is complete. All residents are clear. You're authorized to fall back to safety zone. Copy. Crew is pulling back now. We made it out with 2 minutes to spare. The fire took the secondary line 40 seconds after we cleared it. Rolled through exactly where we'd been standing. Confirmed that staying longer would have meant fatalities. Back at Incident Command. I was filing reports when someone knocked on the crew carrier. Superintendent Hayes? I looked up. The guy was maybe 5'9", lean, Asian features, wearing a Phoenix Regional Communications shirt and looking slightly nervous. That's me. Can I help you? I'm Dominic Chen. I was your dispatcher today during the Saguaro fire. He had a tablet in his hands. I wanted to follow up on the wind forecast timing. Our models were off by 23 minutes, and I need to understand what information would have been more useful in the field so we can improve our briefing protocols. I blinked. You came out here to ask about forecast timing? Yes, you held that line based on information I provided. If my briefing was insufficient, I need to know so it doesn't happen again. He met my eyes. Dark brown, intelligent, absolutely serious. What would have made your decision-making easier? Most dispatchers never left their communication center, never talked to crews in person, never asked what they could do better. Your briefing was solid, I said honestly. The wind forecast was the best available data. Models are never perfect in extreme fire conditions. You gave us what we needed when we needed it, but the timing was off. By 23 minutes in a 48-hour operational period, that's within acceptable modeling error. I studied him. Dominic, right? You did good work today. Your updates were timely, your tone stayed calm, you gave us accurate evacuation progress. That matters in fire operations. Something shifted in his expression. Thank you. I think about the crews we dispatch, about whether we're giving you everything you need. It matters to me that you come home safe. The honesty in that made my chest tight. We came home safe today, partly because your dispatch coordination was excellent. He smiled, small but genuine. Can I buy you coffee? I have more questions about field communication preferences. For protocol improvement, my brain said this was professional networking. My chest said something else entirely. Yeah, I'd like that. We grabbed coffee at a Phoenix diner that understood firefighters needed strong coffee and lots of it. Dominic showed up with his tablet and a list of questions that proved he'd been thinking about dispatch protocols with the kind of obsessive detail I applied to fire behavior. How often do you want wind updates during active fire? He asked. Every hour if conditions are stable, every 15 minutes if they're changing. Structure threat assessments, useful in real time or just during briefing? Real time if we're doing structure protection. Helps us prioritize. We talked for 2 hours. About fire communication, decision-making under pressure, the specific information that helps crews stay safe. But we also talked about other things. Him growing up in Tempe, Chinese-American family who thought emergency dispatch was a strange career choice until he explained he was saving lives without leaving the communications center. Me growing up in Flagstaff, family of firefighters who understood why I chose hotshot work, even though it scared them. Why dispatch? I asked. Most people want to be in the field doing the visible work. Because dispatch is how everything coordinates. We're the voice in your radio, the person tracking every crew and every resource. When things go wrong, we're the ones who make sure help gets there. He leaned forward. I watched the Yarnell Hill fire unfold on our systems, listened to the radio traffic. Those firefighters died partly because communication broke down at critical moments. I became a dispatcher so that never happens on my watch. The intensity in his voice, the weight of that responsibility. I recognized it because I carried the same weight. That's a heavy reason, I said. It's the right reason. He met my eyes. You carry your crew's safety every day. I carry communication for dozens of crews. We do similar work, just different roles. Partnership, I said. Exactly. When we left the diner, sun was setting, Phoenix gold and orange. The specific light that makes the desert look like it's on fire even when it's not. Dominic, I said as we reached our vehicles. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Are you seeing anyone? His expression shifted. Surprise, then warmth. No, work makes it complicated. 12-hour dispatch shifts, rotating schedule, emergency call-outs at 3 a.m. Most people don't understand why I care so much about voices on the radio. I understand. I work 6-month fire seasons away from home. 16-hour days in extreme conditions. My last boyfriend told me I was obsessed with my crew. Were you? Yes, I was. No hesitation. But they're my responsibility. Their safety is everything. I get that. He stepped closer. Carter, I should tell you, I thought about you all day. About your voice on the radio? About whether you were safe. When you reported crew intact, he stopped. I'm not supposed to get personally invested in specific crews, but I did. With you? My heart kicked. I thought about you too. About the voice keeping us informed. About how calm you stayed when everything was going wrong. I reached out, hand to his jaw. Want to see where this goes? Yeah, Dominic said. I really do. I kissed him there in a parking lot with desert sunset behind us and ash still in my hair from holding a fire line. His hand came to my chest, mine to his waist, and everything about him was steady and certain. When we pulled apart, we were both smiling. "That's a good start," Dominic murmured. "Really good start," I agreed. But here's what I didn't know then. Dominic Chen wasn't just a dispatcher who cared about fire crew safety. He was the kind of person who listened to every radio call, tracked every crew's position, carried the weight of knowing that his coordination kept people alive or got them killed, who stayed calm through every emergency because staying calm was survival, for him, for the crews, depending on him. And I was about to spend the next 7 months learning exactly what that cost. Fire season is brutal on relationships. I worked 15, 16-hour days on active fires, slept in crew carriers between shifts, went weeks without real time off. Dominic worked 12-hour dispatch shifts, sometimes longer during major incidents. The kind of schedule that meant we saw each other in stolen moments between my fire assignments and his shift rotations. But we made it work. He came to watch. My crew trained on a rare off day, photographing, us doing saw work and fire shelter deployment drills, asking questions about tactics. I visited the dispatch center during a quiet shift, watched him coordinate multiple resources across 3 different fires, his voice staying calm and professional while tracking dozens of moving pieces. We learned each other in fragments. Dominic made incredible mapo tofu from his grandmother's recipe. I could read fire behavior from smoke color and wind patterns. He had a scar on his left hand from a childhood bicycle accident. I had burns on my forearms from embers that got through my gear. He was meticulous about protocols. Every call logged, every resource tracked, nothing left undocumented. I was the same with crew safety, obsessive about gear checks and risk assessment. We fit together in ways that surprised me. 2 people who worked in crisis, who understood that sometimes you can't leave your post. Who knew what it meant to carry responsibility for other people's lives? "You know what I thought the first time I heard your voice?" Dominic said one night, both of us in my apartment during a 3-day break between fires. "That I sounded tired?" "That too," he laughed. "But also, that you were the most focused person I'd ever heard on the radio. The way you communicated updates, the way you made decisions, the certainty in your voice even in crisis. It was..." He searched for words. "It was really attractive. You thought I was attractive based on my radio voice? I'm excellent at voice-based assessment." He kissed my shoulder. "Also, when I finally saw you in person, you exceeded expectations significantly." "Exceeded expectations?" "You're very attractive, Carter. Devastatingly so. It's actually distracting when I'm trying to do professional dispatch work." I pulled him closer. "You're pretty distracting yourself." "Good," he murmured. But there were cracks I didn't see. Stress fractures in the foundation we were building. Dominic took every shift, every emergency, every major incident that needed experienced dispatch coordination. He worked 60, 70-hour weeks during peak fire season and called it normal. Came home exhausted but wired, couldn't decompress. Lived on coffee and the belief that if he wasn't coordinating, crews would die. "You need rest between shifts," I said after finding him at 2 a.m. reviewing radio logs from incidents weeks old. "I'm just staying current on communication patterns." "You're not sleeping. You worked 72 hours this week." Fire season is intense. Everyone works long hours. Not like this. Not without real recovery time. I sat beside him. "Dominic, I've seen burnout. I've seen dispatchers make mistakes from exhaustion. You need to slow down." "I can't. Crews depend on me. Other dispatchers can handle shifts. Not like I do. I know the crews. I know the terrain. I know the incident histories. If I'm not coordinating..." He stopped. "People could die, Carter." Because I wasn't there, and there it was. The weight he'd been carrying since Yarnell Hill, since becoming a dispatcher, since deciding that communication coordination was his responsibility alone. "Dominic," I said carefully, "you can't be the only dispatcher who keeps crews safe." "I have to try." The breaking point came in late July. Dominic had been working a major incident complex, 5 fires burning simultaneously across Arizona, dozens of crews deployed, communication coordination at maximum intensity. He'd worked 16-hour shifts for 6 days straight. I was deployed to one of those fires. Heard his voice on the radio constantly, coordinating resources, updating conditions, tracking crews. Always calm, always professional, always steady. On day 7, I was back at base camp when I heard it. A different voice on the dispatch radio. Not Dominic, someone else. I keyed my radio. Dispatch, this is Arizona Hotshot Superintendent Hayes. Where's our regular coordinator? Pause. Then, Superintendent Hayes, Coordinator Chen has been temporarily relieved of duty pending medical evaluation. I'm coordinating your operations today. My blood went cold. What medical evaluation? I'm not authorized to provide details. Please stand by for operational updates. I found him at his apartment 3 hours later, got someone to cover my crew, drove back to Phoenix, used the key he'd given me. He was sitting on his floor with his back against the couch, staring at nothing. Dom, I said softly, sitting beside him. I made a mistake. His voice was hollow. I was coordinating air operations. I cleared a helicopter for water drop on Sector 7. It was Sector 9. I transposed the numbers because I'd been awake for 20 hours and I couldn't think straight. Was anyone hurt? No, the pilot caught the error before drop. But I almost sent a helicopter to drop water on an active fire line with a crew underneath. I almost killed people because I was too tired to read a map correctly. I took his hand. What did operations say? Mandatory rest. Medical clearance required before returning to duty. Evaluation by their occupational health psych. He finally looked at me. Carter, I've never made a mistake like that. Not in 6 years. I've coordinated hundreds of incidents and never until now. Because even you have limits. His eyes filled. But what if crews need me and I'm not there? Then other dispatchers help them. Phoenix Regional has excellent coordinators. You trained half of them. They know what they're doing. I pulled him closer. Dom, I love you. I've loved you since you showed up asking about forecast timing because you wanted to do your job better. But watching you destroy yourself trying to coordinate every emergency is killing me. You have to stop. I don't know how, he whispered. Then let me help you learn. I cupped his face. You told me once that Yarnell Hill happened partly because communication broke down. But Dom, you can't prevent every breakdown by never resting. You can't save every crew by working yourself to death. You have to trust the system, trust your colleagues, and take care of yourself. Please, he broke. Quietly, face pressed to my shoulder, shaking with sobs he'd probably been holding since Yarnell Hill. I held him, let him cry, murmured the things he'd said to so many crews over the radio. You're okay. You're safe. Help is here. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were red but clearer. I'm scared, he admitted. If I step back, if I let others coordinate, what if something goes wrong? What if someone dies because I wasn't there? Then it's not your fault. You're one dispatcher in a system. You're excellent at what you do, but you're not solely responsible for every crew's safety. That's too much weight for any one person. But I want to be good enough. You are good enough. You're so good that your colleagues look up to you, that crews request you specifically, that operations wanted you coordinating their biggest incidents. But being good enough doesn't mean never resting. It means knowing your limits and working sustainably so you can keep being good for years to come. He nodded slowly. Okay, I'll try. 9 months later, recovery isn't linear. Neither is learning sustainable work practices, or finding balance or building a relationship with someone who's still learning he doesn't have to carry everything alone. But we made it work. Dominic returned to dispatch after medical clearance, still excellent at his job, but with mandatory schedule limits, with occupational health support, with colleagues who shared the coordination load, started therapy for first responder stress, actually used his days off for rest instead of reviewing old incident logs. I learned his patterns, the signs when he was taking on too much, the way his voice got tight when he felt responsible for things outside his control, learned how to support without enabling, how to remind him he was part of a system, not solely responsible for it. He learned mine, too, the way I got quiet before deploying to dangerous fires. The protective instinct toward my crew that sometimes made me take unnecessary risks. Learned how to pull me back when I was overextending, how to remind me that keeping myself safe helped me keep my crew safe. We built something steady, something that flexed with fire season intensity instead of breaking. One morning in March, off-season, crew doing training instead of active fire. I woke to find Dominic on my balcony watching the sunrise over the desert. You okay? I asked, wrapping arms around him from behind. He leaned back into me. Just thinking. About last season. About how we made it work even when it was hard. About how you helped me learn to step back without feeling guilty. He turned to look at me. "Carter, I got asked to help develop a new dispatcher wellness program. Training for sustainable coordination, peer support systems, mandatory rest protocols. They want me involved because of my experience." My chest felt full. "That's incredible." It made me think about what you said, about how being good enough means working sustainably, about building systems instead of carrying everything alone. He smiled. "I want to help other dispatchers avoid burning out the way I did. Make sure they know they don't have to be perfect to be valuable." I kissed his forehead. "You'd be amazing at that." "We'd be amazing at that," he corrected. "I want your perspective too. Crew superintendent input on what communication support actually helps in the field. Make sure we're training dispatchers to serve crews effectively while taking care of themselves." "Partnership," I said. "Always." We stood there watching desert sunrise turn from pink to gold. 9 months of learning each other behind us and an entire off-season ahead to build something bigger. "I love you," Dominic said. "I love that you understand fire season, that you don't resent the work or the hours, that you helped me learn I could love the work and love myself enough to rest. I love you too. Since you showed up at my crew carrier asking about forecast timing because you cared enough to do better." I held him tighter. "You're allowed to love the work and take care of yourself. They're not mutually exclusive. Either are we," he murmured. 9 months after meeting during a wildfire when he was the voice on my radio and I was the crew trying to hold a line, standing with a dispatcher who kept crews alive and learning how to save his life in return, I realized something. Some people spend their whole lives looking for someone who understands, someone who gets that the work matters, but so does coming home, someone who knows what it means to carry weight and when it's time to share the load. I found that person in a calm voice on the radio during a crisis, then found him in person asking how to do better, then found him every day after learning how to build something real. That's not a bad story. That's not bad at all.